Imagine, if you will, the world in the year 1250 BC. To the casual observer today, we think of this as a primitive time, a world of dust, ox carts, and superstition. But if you were to stand on the docks of the city of Ugarit on the Syrian coast, you would see a reality far more familiar to our own than you might expect. You would smell the scent of cedar wood from Lebanon, stored in massive stacks for shipment to the treeless plains of Egypt. You would see laborers hauling amphorae of olive oil from Crete and heavy ingots of copper, shaped like ox hides, arriving from the island of Cyprus. You would hear a dozen different languages: Hittite, Akkadian, Luwian, Egyptian, and early Greek, all arguing over shipping manifests. This was the first truly globalized era. This wasn't a collection of isolated tribes. These were sophisticated superpowers bound by a concept we think of as modern: globalism. In the north, you had the Mycenaean Greeks, the legendary figures of the Iliad and the Odyssey, living in palace fortresses like Mycenaean and Tyrans. In central Turkey, the Hittite Empire commanded a terrifying chariot corps from their mountain capital of Hattusa. In the south, the new kingdom of Egypt was at the height of its architectural glory under Ramses the Great. At the top of this world were the great kings. These weren't just local tribal leaders. They were the CEOs of massive bureaucratic superpowers. They called each other brother in diplomatic letters. They exchanged daughters in marriage, sent doctors to each other's courts, and shared technological secrets. But the secret to their splendor was also their greatest vulnerability. It was a chemical dependency. To be a superpower in 1300 BC, you needed bronze. And to make bronze, you needed two ingredients that were rarely found together. You needed copper, which was plentiful in Cyprus, and you needed tin. Tin was the lithium or the oil of the ancient world. It was incredibly rare. To get it, merchants had to trek across the jagged Hindu Kush mountains of modern-day Afghanistan or sail past the Pillars of Hercules to the misty shores of Britain. This meant that a king in Greece couldn't go to war, and a farmer in Turkey couldn't plow his fields, unless a trade route spanning 3,000 miles remained perfectly secure. These nations were locked in a brotherhood of kings, bound together by a fragile thread of supply and demand. They were too interconnected to fight a total war, and too dependent to survive alone. They had built a perfect machine. They believed it would last forever. But the problem with a perfectly interconnected machine is that if one gear breaks, the entire engine explodes. The first signs of the end weren't found on a battlefield, but in the soil. Recent archaeological evidence suggests a mega-drought hit the region, lasting for over a century. Imagine the panic as the rains stopped year after year. The grain stores emptied. The kings who claimed their power from the gods suddenly looked powerless as their people starved. This wasn't a 3-year drought. It was a climatic shift that fundamentally altered the landscape. When we look at the rings of ancient trees and the mineral deposits in Mediterranean caves, we see a terrifying pattern. The Nile stopped flooding with its usual reliability. The wheat fields of the Hittites turned to dust. We find letters from this period that are heart-wrenching. The king of the Hittites writes to the pharaoh, not asking for gold or soldiers, but for grain. He writes, "It is a matter of life and death." As the crops failed, the social contract evaporated. The peasants, who had labored for centuries to build the palaces and temples, began to look at their gilded masters with resentment. When the granaries went empty, the cities became tinderboxes. Internal rebellions likely broke out. The just-in-time delivery system of the Bronze Age began to stutter. If the tin didn't arrive because a distant city was starving, the bronze couldn't be made. If the bronze couldn't be made, the army couldn't be armed. The machine was starting to grind itself to pieces. And then, out of the smoke of a burning Mediterranean, came the most mysterious villains of the ancient world, the sea peoples. In the inscriptions of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III, we find frantic descriptions of a conspiracy of nations coming from the sea. They weren't just an army. They were a displacement. They traveled with their families and belongings in ox carts, fighting their way across the coastline. They were desperate, they were hungry, and they were unstoppable. They hit the Hittite Empire first, a civilization that had stood for 500 years, that had survived plagues and civil wars, collapsed in a matter of weeks. One by one, the dominoes fell. Troy, Hattusa, Gaza, Knossos, the great cities of the era, were put to the torch. But here is the haunting part. When these cities fell, they weren't rebuilt. The survivors didn't just move, they forgot. The city of Ugarit provides us with one of history's most chilling moments. Archaeologists found a clay tablet in a kiln, being baked for hardening so it could be sent. It was a letter from the king of Ugarit to the king of Cyprus. It read, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came. My cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. The country is abandoned to itself." The letter never left the city. The enemy arrived while the clay was still wet. Ugarit was burned to the ground and would never be inhabited again. In Greece, the art of writing, a script we call Linear B, disappeared for nearly 400 years. We entered a dark age where the memory of these great empires passed into myth and legend. This wasn't just a loss of wealth, it was a loss of collective memory. For centuries, the people living among the ruins of these massive palaces had no idea who had built them. They invented stories of gods and heroes to explain the massive stones they could no longer move. Was it the drought? Was it the sea peoples? Or was it a systemic collapse where the complexity of the world itself became its greatest weakness? What makes the Bronze Age collapse different from a mere war is the scale of the unlearning. In the modern world, if a city is destroyed, we rebuild it. But when the Bronze Age collapsed, the survivors didn't rebuild. They fled into the mountains. They became subsistence farmers. The complex bureaucracy required to maintain a written language died with the palace accountants. This is why the stories of the Trojan War feel like myths, because they were passed down by mouth through centuries of darkness before someone finally picked up a pen again to write the Iliad. As we look at the ruins of these empires today, we are forced to ask a question that feels uncomfortably relevant. Can a civilization become too big to fail, or is the very act of becoming global the thing that ultimately ensures its downfall? These civilizations didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because they were so interconnected that they had no firewalls. A failure in the tin mines of the East led to a military failure in the West, which led to a famine in the North, which fueled a migration in the South. The Bronze Age didn't end with a whimper. It ended in a roar of fire and a centuries-long silence. It serves as a reminder that civilization is not a ladder we climb, but a web we weave. And if too many threads are cut at once, the whole thing can vanish into the dust of history. As we look at our own world of global supply chains, instant communication, and climate instability, the ruins of Hattusa and Mycenaean whisper a warning across 3,000 years. The machine is only as strong as its weakest gear.